Hey everyone, welcome to our Support Ops Hangout. This is a weekly talk show that's focused all on the customer. So we talk customer support, customer experience, customer success, customer fill in the blank. Whatever it is, if it's related to the customer, we're talking about it each week. This week, Chase Livingston is out off, I don't know, doing bearded manly stuff, I guess. I don't really know what he's doing. But we've got my two other favorite people in the world. First, Carolyn from Buffer. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I think he's in San Francisco.
Oh, did you see him when you were on the way to the office this
I
morning?
haven't yet, but we're gonna do that at some point.
Okay, so he's probably doing bearded manly stuff in San Francisco.
I think so.
That's the perfect setting for that.
Yeah.
And then we got Jeff Vincent from Wistia. How are you, Jeff?
I'm good. I don't have a beard though.
We can fix that.
So I guess not as good as the Chases, but I'm doing pretty okay.
Yeah, we ran into this problem with Matt from Campaign Monitor last time. He was like, I don't have a beard, so we found him. I don't know if he found it or we found it or whatnot, but it was an app that gives you a beard whenever you upload a picture. It's the greatest thing in the world.
Oh yeah, Mustachify too for
Oh
mustache.
yeah.
See, all your problems are solved right there. We can all just go home now.
That's what I always wanted.
You just ruined your shout out. That would have been a perfect shout out.
Oh, dang. Anyway, this week we're talking about training your team. This is something that, as as our kind of support gets, older, basically, we start having support people around that's been here for more than 6 months. We want to start looking at how to train them into their field. A lot of people look at customer support is like a stepping stone, I'm going to put in 2 years and I'm going to get out of it and do real stuff like design or program or something like that. But I think you can, make the case that this is a good, and we have made that case before on the show, that this is a career just like anything else, and just like with any other career, you've got training that goes into it, growing that goes into it. So we're going to look at how to make that happen, what's growth look like for a support pro, and all that fun stuff. We'll start with Jeff on this one. So Jeff, when you're looking at the rest of your customer team, your customer champions, and going, how can I make them better at their job? What things are you thinking about in terms of training those people?
That is a great question, Chase. I was thinking about this one before the show, which I normally don't.
So you came prepared for this one. I like that.
Right, exactly. Because this is such a huge topic, and I'm sure there are so many people who are thinking about this all the time and just totally stumped. For us, I think it's a little bit different because we're one part focused on, if there's 4 parts in a customer champion's whole, we're one part focused on the day-to-day of providing excellent support, and probably 3 parts focused on what are they going to do next month that makes them and our customers even happier. So I break it out like that because, one, we hire people who their normal voice is just awesome for support, and a lot of times we have this whole training program, how we're going to review emails and go over them with them and spend weeks, diving into how to respond to this problem and that problem, and after 2 days of me reviewing their emails or somebody on the team reviewing their emails, we're like, you know what? This guy or girl, they totally got it. I don't think we should be doing this for them at all. So we have once a month a support review meeting where people bring a tough conversation that they've had in the last couple of weeks, and we just walk through the thread, and people, jump in and say here's where you might have used some language that confused them, or here's where they wanted to go left and you started talking about something that was completely to the right, you guys kind of diverged and now you're talking over each other or something like that. But a lot of the meetings that we have are, you come in with the expectation of, okay, everybody in the room has a lot of support that they're doing, right? And we take that as a given that is the most important work that they do every day. The next question is, what are we doing to make Wistia support better tomorrow than it is today? And that's where a lot of the training I guess it's not training because I don't always have the answers, but a lot of the support that I provide for all of our champions, whether they're new or veterans, comes in as what are the right problems for us to be tackling, and how do we set projects that we can accomplish, and how do you pick yourself back up if you try something and it just totally flops, or where do you go to give feedback, or how do you go about working with other teams? All of those things are, when I'm looking at the next year, I'm thinking our support is pretty good. It could be way better. And the way to make it better is a combination of bringing in more people who can do awesome support, but also taking some of those problems that our customers face on a daily basis and making that experience much better. And I rely heavily on our current champs to do that. So yeah, it's not really a training. I guess I don't have a solid answer for the training piece, or maybe we'll unravel that as we go. But I think in terms of what I'm focused on, it's more about how can I amplify their powers and make them better self-project managers and that kind of thing.
See, you can really tell that you thought about that before the show. I mean, it was nice and cohesive, and it just made my heart flutter. It was so Carolyn, at Buffer, what does that training look like? So if when you hire on the new happiness hero, and I think we can safely, between all of us, kind of say, there's going to be some basic training, the do's and don'ts of how to write an email. That's not really, those basics. That's not what we're really looking for. We're more interested in at the 6-month or a year mark. How are you making sure those happiness heroes grow in their job?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think we have a lot of overlap with Wistia on this. First of all, we only hire people, like you said from the beginning, we are not really doing here's how to write an email, because we hire people who are great at that, and we hire long-time Buffer users, so they already know what most of the buttons do because they're already Power users. Of course, there's just tons of history at the company where somebody has a feature flipped on for them that was in beta, and then we dropped, and they're like, why are they seeing this thing that I've never seen before? And so yeah, there's a ton of just stuff that you have to learn just in the history of any company, in the nooks and crannies of any product. But yeah, that's all relatively, I think, normal. So the thing that we start to do at the 6-month and a year mark is get them involved in the product, which I think is very similar to, I think there's a lot of overlap to what Jeff and his team do in terms of not just answering the questions, but figuring out what the questions are and trying to fix the original problem. Yeah, around we have some people on board who've been on board for only 6 months or less, and those people don't have this role yet. But everybody else has one specific product area, whether it's iOS or Android or the extension or the web dashboard or whatever. Third-party integrations. And that's what they really focus on in terms of, they still have to know the rest of the product at 90% because they have to answer questions about it and teach people, but they really get into the real details of that one particular product area, and then they're sort of the liaison between the engineer that's working on that and the rest of the happiness team. So that's a lot of fun because it's something other than just answering tweets and emails, and it allows them to have a lot of ownership over that particular area. So, they might say oh, we tagged 27 extension questions this week or last week. This week it's 42. We need to look at why that is, and then they can dig into that and understand, well, what other tag is happening the most with the extension tag? Is it bug, or is it, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. You can get really nitty-gritty into the details and the data. And so we're trying more and more to become a really data-run team as opposed to relying on our guts, which worked really well until about the 5-person mark and failed after that because no one person has all the information anymore. So yeah, I think that's what starts to happen at 6 months is let me really start to own an area of the product and make sure that the engineer knows exactly what the customers are seeing on that, and let me make sure the other heroes know what's coming down the pike and what we're working on and what we fix and that kind of thing. So they kind of serve as that liaison, which is, I think, fun.
If I could just talk to what I think is different. So I think you're right that the thing that's the most similar about our two approaches is that what I heard and what I totally agree with is it takes a little while when someone new comes on to go from I'm a support person, I'm a happiness hero, or I'm a customer champion to there are deep problems that our customers have that we can solve through support, right? Or there are problems that we're having, that our customers are having, that we're not doing a good job of fixing through support, or that support, in terms of email or phone call or whatever, is not designed to fix. And I want to get a little bit deeper on those, and it takes people a little while to figure out like what's their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think is different about us is that it sounds like the happiness heroes tend to pick off, and I love this approach. We just haven't gotten there yet. They tend to pick off like a part of the product that they want to get super deep on. And what I think GitHub does something very, very similar, where they have an expert on certain questions, essentially, right? Like certain verticals are like totally the ownership of this one person, and it's good because it creates continuity for that person. So a lot of what they look at is questions about the Chrome extension or whatever, and they become like a real expert on that. I think there's a lot of
does that too.
Right, and I think there's a ton of value there. For us, I'm thinking more. Our ownership tends to be more about what's like one part of the total experience that we could really improve. So it's less, I guess maybe only because we have one product, like one point of focus, but what's like one part of that total experience that could really bring, like a customer happiness mind or a support mind would really change our outlook on that. So some examples from our team is Olivier is currently working on a project that he calls Support Dances with Wolves, which we're trying to update and add to our video library for support stuff. And then let's see, Mercer is focused on the way that support tickets that are created in our community come into the inbox and what's the total customer experience around that. Jordan is focused on being a tech lead. We've never had a tech lead before, but we learned from MailChimp how useful that can be. Anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is we tend to be less one part of the product focus and more like one part of the total customer support experience focus. We recently broke into two. I mean, we're still one team, but we started thinking about breaking into two groups. One is self-service support, and the other is one-to-one support. And what that was really helpful, and I mean, it kind of dribbles down to each one person, but before we were in this experience where if you said, what are the three things that you're working on right now, everyone would say like, oh, it's this, and it's this, and it's this, and none of them are really connected, but I'm just really excited about all of them. You for the 4-month mark and say like, okay, how are those things going? And it's like, well, I've taken a step forward in all of them. We've moved a little bit, so we're doing okay, but nobody ever said like, oh, we've made just huge breakthroughs on one, and I totally ignored the other two. It tended to be, because they're great team players, everybody's kind of trying to work on everything, and so instead we've said like, trying to get as narrow as humanly possible on this customer experience piece that you're focused on so that you can make the most progress possible. And so the training, going back to the original question, more of what I'm doing in terms of training is just so like I had to propose that one question to them, right? That one single thing that they were working on, so that my training becomes like, okay, how are we going to move that forward this week? I don't know. I don't think that there's any right or wrong way to do it, but I think that what sounds similar between the two of us is we're trying to give people that ownership over something, but then the training part comes in and saying like, okay, now you have ownership and responsibility over this thing. How are you going to gain like the total context and vision for where this is going to go, and how are you going to share that with your teammates?
Yeah, and I think with Basecamp, just to kind of give us a across the line here. Basecamp is kind of in the middle between the two. It's those where you basically side projects, that kind of thing. So, for instance, like Joan has control over the help pages, and so she goes through and makes sure that those are updated regularly and all that kind of fun stuff. And then we're also some of us are diving more into the experience that goes around the customer interaction. So like one of the things I've been working on with Marissa lately is that we're looking at how we can do one-to-one onboarding better. So you would have one of us as kind of like your guide to walk you through what a Basecamp trial looks like and answer questions and all that fun stuff. So we're looking at how can that customer onboarding experience be better there. So it's for us, anyways. It's kind of a mix between the two, the two approaches that we've been looking at. So, Carolyn, is there any, when we think like training for a designer, for instance, we think about, these are the books that you should be reading. These are the courses online that you can attend. These are, sign up for Treehouse and look through some of the lessons that they have and go to this conference and all that kind of thing. Is there any equivalent there for a support person?
There isn't. There are some books that we talk about so much that everybody just ends up getting them because they're so tired of not knowing what we're talking about, or they've read them before and they're just really in line with what we're doing. For example, Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, or the other one that's big right now at Buffer is oops, I just kicked the table. Is that the decision maker process? I have to look up the actual book title, but it's about like who makes the decisions, and it's basically that it's not the bosses or the leaders or the CEO. It's usually the person who's closest to the problem, and sort of how you establish who is a decision maker. And we talk about the decision maker so much that I think at this point everybody in the team has read it, even though it's not required. Same with conferences. I mean, we have gone to some in the past, and the people who are nearby are going this year. But it's a really interesting question at this moment because I'm considering asking people to read a few of those books before applying. And I haven't totally decided whether or not to do that yet. So I would, not to hijack the conversation of making about hiring, but if you guys have any thoughts on that, either now or later, or listeners, I would love to hear that. It's kind of, I think it sets them up for success when they come on board, and it also weeds out the people who aren't that serious. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, I guess to answer the question, there aren't officially those things, but it's highly suggested that you read like How to Win Friends and Influence People, because that's like the book that our culture is based on. So yeah, at a certain point, most people after the first few weeks are like, okay. And we give everybody a Kindle, and we give unlimited Kindle books. So it's pretty painless to go at least request a book, if not necessarily read it right away.
Yeah, and that's one of those where, especially when you've got a company that awesome like Buffer that is like, here, have a free Kindle, and we're gonna send all these books your way. That's if you hire the right people, they should be naturally inquisitive to reading the books that your team is reading. They should be, they should just automatically go and talk about and figure out, oh, so Carolyn was talking about how to be a decision maker. I should probably read the book that she was talking about so I can better understand that idea behind it. Jeff, what about for Wistia? Any kind of, because this is something that I don't even have a good answer for yet. I searched around for some kind of like customer support class or university. That's me doing air quotes for people that can't watch the video. And there's nothing out there like that. You can find it all day long for designers and programmers and any coding language that you want. It's just not there for support people yet. So how does Wistia handle that kind of conference book training kind of stuff?
Well, we do have, I guess, so there's two things. One is the external ones, the books that if you put them all together, encompass the way that we think about customer support and culture and all that stuff. I think that's kind of what Carolyn was covering. Then the other one is, it's like going back to, you hire the people who already think the way that, you can already trust that the decisions they're going to make in that moment are the types that you'd want to make for the company if you were sitting in their chair, that kind of thing. But there are always like those edge decisions. There's always those times where it's hard to say like, well, no, like I'm not really sure what I should be doing in this case, or I'm struggling to come up with one on the fly, but both of these feel right to me. Like, which one should I choose? That kind of thing. And we have a set of principles, support principles, that that I think it's 12 maybe, that should guide. I guess what's useful is just putting vocabulary to making a decision or having a conversation with a coworker, where it's like, well, we should always give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Or we should always give credit where credit's due. We should always proofread our emails. I mean, that one's super easy. Like these things are, none of them are groundbreaking, but I think they are the types of things that if you were to go to a class, I would expect them to cover. Like the high level, you can't get too in the weeds with support. It's not the kind of thing where you can just go through old threads and talk about it. But you might be able to say that if your company has a set of principles, that your support is like the best way to live those principles every day. So having those handy is definitely key for a new customer champion for us.
So I just got a ping too, and I want to clarify something here on my part. There are conferences out there that are customer oriented. I think like CX Summit, and there was something, Parachute or para something. I forget what it was, but those were talking. Those kind of conferences are geared more toward customer support, customer experiences at a big level. You think like customer experience at like the Verizon or AT&T level, or KFC or whatever else, right? So there are conferences available for that big. On the smaller end, like with our team sizes, our customer bases, us being SaaS products and online support and all that kind of stuff, outside of like UserConf, which they hold twice a year, that there's not really anything else out there. So I did want to point out, just for the record, that I know there are customer stuff out there. It's just not how we do customer experience and all that fun stuff, if that makes sense.
I would love to hear about the other ones too. I'm completely unaware of really. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm saying things that people would personally vouch for being excellent. I personally think that UserConf is a good event. I think people should go. I mean, half of my team is going, and they're super excited about it. I'm super excited for them to go. But if there are other events that people should know about, like, I don't know, I would totally go, and I would be back on the show in 6 months talking about how awesome it was. I just am totally unaware. Even for the ones that are like big, I've never heard of them.
Yeah, there's
That's why we did this show in the first place, is because it's really hard to find resources, period, for this stuff. Let alone a podcast. Like, how about a conference? Like, it just doesn't. We all loved UserConf, and we wanted to be talking about this stuff more often, and so that's why we created it. So that's let's hear about it. I want to hear about these events.
Me too.
I'll make sure to put a list of the ones that I know about in the show notes. As far books, conferences, any other resources that we think are good ones and that kind of stuff to throw in there. I will make a plug too for a conference called Write the Docs. If you haven't been to that, it's pretty handy, especially when it comes to working on your KB and your help docs and all that kind of fun stuff. So not necessarily like customer kind of thing, but definitely like customer help docs kind of thing. But like I said, I'll put all those in the show notes, and we'll have fun. And if you know of any, supportops.co/question. That'll get you the message form to get us to get in touch with us and let us know about ones that we're missing. Because I'm kind of like y'all. It's like I know a couple off the top of my head, but not as many as there are for other professions. I'll put it that way. So last thing I want to touch on. We talked about kind of this high level. What you should be doing with your team, that kind of thing. What do you look at when you're looking at like a specific person? When you're doing your one-on-one reviews with them, what kind of things are you looking at for them specifically to grow in their role? We'll let Carolyn start with that one.
Ooh, okay, so this one's a little bit of a cop-out, but for every person. So, like you said, we've got like we have some people who've been on board for a while, and it's so interesting because some of them are just absolutely flourishing. Like they're just kicking ass. They're leading. They're making the rest of the team excited. They're writing blog posts. Like they just are living and breathing Buffer customer happiness, and that is so fun to see. And in those cases, it's honestly just a lot of initiative in support. Like, are they finding problems that need to be fixed in the product? Are they thinking of ways to improve the email experience from our side and the customer side? Like, it's a lot of that.
Now, are you pushing and prodding like on your part? Is that something that you're working with them on, or is it just you hired the right people and they're gung-ho and you're just trying to get out of their way so they can do awesome stuff?
That's a good question. Well, we have a lot of meetings, so there's some inherent prodding in that, because if 2 weeks in a row they're like, got no irons in the fire, then that's kind of a tough meeting from their end, right? So I think just by nature of the fact that we sync up a lot on what people are working on, there's some inherent expectation that there'll be an update. So yeah, I would say there's definitely some top-down encouragement, and I get that too from Joel. But yeah, for the most part, it's honestly just me listening to what they're working on, and I ask questions and offer suggestions and say, have you thought about this? And Patrick's working on this, you should talk to him, and Daniel's reading this interesting book that might be relevant. Like, there's definitely, I try and help make connections, but for the most part, it's definitely, especially in terms of coming up with the ideas, it's just getting out of their way. And so that's kind of one side. And then the other side is that it's very interesting to me because I start to lose people into other areas of the product, and or other areas of the team, and that's really exciting too, because in a evil fantasy world of a support team lead, your people go off into all the other areas, and then there's customer focused people in everywhere, right? So I mean, that's just really exciting, and for example, Patrick is thinking a lot about customer development right now, so he's still talking to a lot of customers, but he's not doing as many emails because he's asking product related questions to customers. And so I have a feeling that he's drifting in that direction, and there's some others who are drifting in other directions, and that's really awesome too. And usually that isn't so much them having multiple irons in the fire, and it's them just getting really excited about one thing that either isn't being done by anyone in the team, and we just needed somebody to do it, or somebody else in the team is doing it and was totally overwhelmed and needed some help. So yeah, but in both cases, I'm not coming up with things for them to do. It's just getting out of their way.
So when you talk about sending them off into other parts of the company and to other parts of the product, it's still customer oriented roles, right? It's not like one of them's flipping over and being like, oh well, email was fun, but now I want to write code for the product instead.
Not yet, but I would be thrilled for that to happen. If somebody graduated from customer service into any other area, or any other area graduated into customer service. I mean, Colin was just writing code. I don't mean to, just is a dangerous word, but he was focused exclusively on engineering, and then he sort of drifted toward our team and realized that he wanted to be building stuff for our team and talking to customers more. So I think it goes both ways. So yeah, I mean, if somebody decided to learn to code and then got at the level where that was an appropriate role for that person in the team, that would be thrilling. But yeah, it hasn't happened. I mean, it hasn't happened yet like that.
Jeff, what about with Wistia? If you're looking at like Mercer, for example, what kind of things are you looking at one-on-one with a person to help them grow and be a better customer champion for Wistia?
Mercer.
She say Mercer, but just pick anybody.
She tells me what to do. So I think in terms of the day-to-day and even like the short term, the individual team member, like Carolyn said, like we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and when they need a pick-me-up, or when they're just like spread all over the place, like it's sort of my job to listen and say, okay, so you just talked for half an hour, like, here's what I heard, this, and this, and they're like, oh yeah, that was really helpful, and I that's like the easiest thing in the world to be able to do is just listen to them repeat back what they said, and then they're like, oh wow, that was really helpful, thanks, and you're like, yep, you betcha. But I think
Our job is so easy.
I know it's the easiest thing in the world, but what I tend to put more thought into, I think, is asking them what the long term is, like what is it that they want to be doing in a year or 2 years or even further out, and then thinking about how the role that they're doing now is going to get them there. Because like in Mercer's case, and she like totally would be fine with me talking about this. She wants to, because everyone on the team knows this. She has earned and wants to be doing more leadership stuff. Like that's something that she wants to get into. And so we started talking probably more than a year ago about like, where am I at now? How do I get there? What are some of the things I need to be working on actively to get there, right? And so when we're checking in, it's about, this was something that last week you thought you didn't do such a good job at, and you're going to be really focused for the next month on that. How is that progress going? Like I happened to see an interaction that you had where, the you of a year ago would have reacted totally differently. Like, what do you think about that? Like, it's important to take a moment and just think about how far you've come. Maybe I'm like looking, I'm always like reading books and stuff, and maybe I'm sending her books that I'm like, hey, I just read this. This totally resonated with me in terms of your, longer term mission. Like, let's talk about this. So in a one-on-one, it tends to be first, I just kind of give them the floor, like, let's just talk, whatever it is that is on your mind, let's talk about it. And then I'll, like Carolyn said, prod them a little bit to say, like, okay, so as long as as long as I'm understanding your project correctly, this is what you're working on right now, right? Like, what's the next action step, right? And then what's the action step after that? And have you run it by this person because they're working on something very similar? And then I try to leave a section for the end to just say, like, by the way, as is always the case, like we haven't caught up on a personal level in a while. Is everything going well? Everything's still going well with, your significant other or whatever, just checking in on all of that stuff and saying, like, I know that you wanted to be doing this in the long term. Like, does that still feel right to you? Like, is this still the right thing? I think my big fear in the back of my head is that someone on my team will wake up one day and say, like, oh, I hadn't really thought about what I was going to do next, and now I'm giving it thought, and I'm realizing that I really love this job, but it's not what I want to be doing, right, or something like that. And that, like, it's my job to be asking them that question and to be helping them get there. And I'm lucky that a lot of the people on our team don't look at support at all as a stepping stone. In fact, there are some of them that I'm like, hey, there's going to be a period in the next year or so where you're not going to be doing nearly as much support as you do now because you'll be focused heavily on something else. And they're like, well, I'll still be in there. Like, I'll still be doing a lot of emails, right? Like, I don't want to, like, get away from that. And I have to, like, pry it out of their cold, dead fingers. And which is amazing, and we totally got all the right people. But there's still the question of, and Carolyn, I'm sure, would agree with this, like, a lot of folks on my team spend a lot of their time answering email. And it's incredibly valuable. Our customers would all give them a hug if they could. But I also want to make sure that they're thinking, okay, is this what I want to be doing, or is there something about support that I love so much, right? Like Colin, he has skills outside of answering emails, and he wants to, like, participate in the customer interaction piece, and he also wants to participate in this other piece. And I loved what Carolyn said about, like, the graduation or the like changing of roles goes both ways, because it's not just I'm in this role and now tomorrow I'm in this other role. It's like, I love what you're doing over there because you're talking to customers more, and I wish I could be able to do that. And there are people on my team who are like, I love the customer part because I can see how our marketing could improve, or I could see how this can improve or that can improve, whatever. And putting them in that position where it's like, all right, let's get there. Like, let's get you some resources that will help you, provide better feedback or better contribute in that way or whatever. That sort of longer, it's not super long term, like, what are you going to do when you retire, but, like, what are you going to do in the next couple of years, I think is the time frame that's really great to think about with your team.
You can't be afraid to let people move on from just doing like straight customer interaction, like email support, live chat support, that kind of thing. I was talking with a friend last week, and a good example that I experienced was there was a restaurant in Murfreesboro that we go to all the time, absolutely loved it. Had the same waitress every time we went in. She knew us by name. She knew our drink orders. She knew our taste and preferences, so she could recommend different dishes and all that kind of fun stuff. She was probably the best server, hostess, waitress that I've ever, worked with. And one day we came in and found out she had been promoted into a manager role, and we were really excited. But my first thought was, "Oh man, this is like you're not gonna get as good service now because it's gonna be somebody else." But so we sat down at the table, had the new server came over and everything else, and they were just as good as she was, as the original server was, because she had trained them well and passed down everything that she knew into them. So sometimes I think we get afraid of, if I move Mercer out of what she's doing now, she's gonna, we're gonna lose a valuable person interacting with customers and emails every day. But as long as you're doing your training right and hiring the right people, I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Like, we've all talked about hiring the right people and then just kind of getting out of their way, like poking and prodding when we need to, but for the most part, just let them be awesome.
Well, yeah, and some of this is being selfish as a team lead and saying, like, okay, you're awesome. How can I amplify your awesome? Right? Like Mercer is a classic example. Mercer has the ability, I would put Mercer up against any support person on any team anywhere. I don't know how she does it. It's incredible. She's just over there on that one of those like gaming keyboards that's the loudest thing ever, just clacking away. And she's also biking the entire time. Just to put you into the context of the Wistia office, she's on like one of those bikes that's under the desk. So she's biking like 25 miles a day while answering like 120 emails with all these awesome customers who are writing in. And part of me is like, okay, so like, Mercer forever, like that would be pretty sweet. Like, what do I got to do to like keep Mercer forever? But then the other part is like, okay, how do I get Mercer to amplify her powers by like finding maybe connecting and finding the other people who she also thinks would be awesome and bringing them in, or like finding the ways that she can spread that to other members of the existing team. Like there's this book, Tribal Leadership, I think it's called, and it has those. No, you're both giving me blank stares, but it has these like 4 or 5 steps of the team, and there's like, everything sucks, my life sucks, I'm great, we're great, everybody's great. I think those are the five stages, and in order to get from one stage to the other, you really have to approach the person and say, it's true, you're great. Now, how do you make everybody else really great? And it becomes about, from a support person's point of view, it becomes about, you're doing amazing, you're doing everything and more than I ever could have trained you for. Now, how do you help me train or bring on 2 people in the time that it took you to, took us to bring you on? Or how do we take what you're doing and multiply it? And it can't just be you spending less and less time at home, or you answering twice as many emails as you do now. It has to be finding new people who can learn from you. So that's like, I mean, that's not, it doesn't fall into the training bucket. Totally falls into when we're having like a one-on-one or even like as a in a team meeting. It's like, how do we give people that feedback that pushes them out of their comfort zone and gets us towards that place where everyone's like amplifying each other's powers. I just think that that's like such a crucial piece that I don't know how to talk to really.
It's also, I would say, probably the most fun adventure I've been on at this company is when the people who I was leading became leaders, because leading people was the skill that it had taken me all these months and years to learn how to do, and I like messed up a lot in the beginning, and like sweet Joel was such a good mentor to me in that.
Sweet Joel.
Sweet Joel. And then
sweet baby Joel.
Suddenly you're leading leaders, and so you're coaching on how to be a leader, and that's a totally different skill set, and it's a brand new thing to learn how to do. So as the team lead, it's really exciting because suddenly you're developing skills that you didn't have before, and you didn't need before, and you're also your wonderful people who have worked really hard are now getting to be in this really scary place where they used to be so good at their jobs, and now suddenly they're judged totally differently, and you have to sort of help them get used to that concept and be okay with maybe not being the one who slays the most tickets anymore, but helping them recognize the impact that they're having in other ways, which that's really fun to get to do, and to have your people sort of practice that and get to feel excited about growing the team and maybe helping with the culture and providing feedback and learning all these skills that previously only you had because you were the only team lead in the group. So I think the more of that happens, like, you don't just amplify them, you amplify the leader concept, because then suddenly you have all these people who are helping everybody else too, which is, you're sort of amplifying their support skills, but you're also amplifying the amount of leadership in the team, which is really, really powerful. So yeah.
I think that one thing you said in there was the managing to the moving target, which was like really hard at first. Like, you get somebody really excited about a project and you get them really amped up about this accomplishment thing, and then they get there, and as the team lead, it is like your, at first, sort of sad duty, but then you kind of get the hang of it to be able to say, like, awesome, that's so great, like, okay, here's like, a flute of champagne. Now, next thing, let's get started on this next project, right? Or like, oh, how far away do you think you are at completing this project? Oh, a week? Okay, let's start talking about what you're going to do next. And I think, especially if you hire people from other companies who have a decent amount of experience, they come in with the idea that it's like, okay, there's going to be little blip projects along the way, but for the most part, it's just kind of like, day in, day out, just kind of hanging, maybe check out a little early, no big deal. And at least for us, like, we're at a place where what excites the entire team is moving as fast as possible and providing like better support tomorrow than we did today and that kind of thing. And so at first it can be, I think at least it can be very difficult to be like, yeah, the target does keep moving, and I know we said this was like the biggest thing since sliced bread, but there's actually a thing after this, right? And pretty soon people's minds start like getting into that groove, and they start saying like, oh yeah, and like thinking like this totally unlocks my thinking about A, B, and C, and I can't wait to tackle all of them. I just want to do them all at once. And you're like, then you go back to your job of like reining them in and focusing them in. But at least at first, it's just a new experience for them. It's like, this feels like a final to you if you come out of college, or it feels like a major project to you, but there's actually something after that too. And there's like this managing to the moving target thing that, as a leader, I think can be tough at first. At least maybe it was just for me. But that's certainly a skill as well.
So wait, what is better than sliced bread?
Toast.
Heated sliced bread.
Yeah, exactly, with peanut butter on it.
Ooh.
Duh, Chase.
I'm sorry, I didn't know there was such great things beyond that. I was intrigued. So that's what we think. Let us know what you think, what we got right, what we got wrong, what we could do better, and send us any resource links and things like that. Send it my way, and we'll get them in the show notes as well. So portops.co/question will get you over to us. You can email me, chase@supportops.co, or follow any of us on Twitter. All those links and everything are in the show notes. So that said, that brings us to my favorite part of the week.
So I somehow have lost the power to do this.
Just do it on your desk or
okay.
something.
All right. Let me see if the mic's close enough.
It's this week's shout-outs. These are the things that are making us happy, so happy we want to shout them out from the rooftops and mountaintops and let you know, hey, look, you should be doing this thing, watching this thing, reading this thing, doing whatever. I was going to give mine to a different app, but I think my new shout-out should probably be Jeff's epic drum roll. So, that was pretty awesome. So, Carolyn, what are you shouting out this week?
Okay. This week I've gotten this whole month, I've gotten somewhat obsessed with the concept of remote working because I've been doing it for 2 years, but I have also only lived in 2 places in 2 years, and so I'm getting a little bit of the travel bug. So I don't have it yet. I don't have any plans or anything, but I've just been sort of obsessing about all the resources out there for for location-independent digital workers. And the one today that I'm really into is called nomadlist.io. And you can sort of rank cities by, why are you laughing? Uh-oh.
Everything with an IO just gets a little bit of a laugh from me.
Oh, well, this one is going to get a laugh, and then you're going to love it. You can rank cities by their temperature, how fast their internet, and one other thing. Oh, price. And you can sort of see what's out there, and you can. There's also, if you just scroll down on that page, there's also like other resources. So, yeah, I think it's really fun. Even not necessarily if you're only a remote worker and you're trying to live somewhere else, but even if you just wanted to travel somewhere for a week and go on vacation, but still maybe experience that feeling of working for like a day remotely or something. So yeah.
Something that Jeff will never get to experience since they don't do remote working. Good job.
You can work remotely like a little, right?
Yeah, sure.
Every now and then.
Go to Chiang Mai in Thailand, where it's 90 degrees and the air quality index is good. And they have fast internet, apparently.
See, this is a rabbit hole. This is
a total rabbit hole, because now I actually do want to go to Prague, which also has more than 100 points. So that must mean something good.
I will say there is some rabbit hole. I think it was you, Carolyn, that sent me down like digitalnomad.com or something like that.
Yeah, I've been sharing a lot of those lately.
Yeah, that my whole afternoon was just gone, completely gone. Yeah. So Jeff, what are you shouting out this week? Obviously not anything with a .io in it.
I'm sorry. There's this quote. I don't know where this quote came from, but it was like, anything after a .io is like how you know that the service is not going to be around in like 3 months or something like that. And now every time I hear that, I have a little chuckle. I have a ton of respect for a bunch of those services. Customer.io, come on, love it. It's totally not a hard and fast rule, but somebody told me that quote, and now every time I hear it, and you kind of like tacked it on at the end. You weren't like, oh, it's Nomad List. You're like, it's Nomad List.io. So it just caught me off guard. I am reading a book called A More Beautiful Question, The Power of Inquiry to Spark Breakthrough Ideas by Warren Berger. And this book it's awesome. I tracked it down because I was thinking, I think that you just over time get the idea that you can ask fewer questions because you like totally get it. And I was finding myself asking not enough questions, right? And then like somebody else would ask a question, I'd be like, damn, that is such a good question to ask in this context. Like, that's so great that you asked that. That totally unlocked like the way that we were thinking about it or whatever. And so I thought to myself, like, okay, I need a book on this that will like, kind of like give me some, good references or like just kind of get me thinking in that way again. And I did a little research, and there were like 3 people online who were just saying how much they love this book. 3 people that I like followed their blog or whatever. And I totally recommend it. The book is filled with questions, and I mean, sometimes it's one of those things where I doubt that the person actually asked this question, but the author just frames their work in terms of a giant question, right? But still, to be thinking about the underlying question that someone was tackling when they tackled a big project like Netflix or Pandora or something like that is a really helpful reminder that we just don't ask enough questions at this point. So yeah, I totally recommend it. Check it out.
That's what the next show is going to be. We're just going to ask a bunch of questions and just be like, man, this is what we're thinking.
I'm in for that. Just talk right past each other with questions. Chase, like what's your shout out this week?
Nice handoff there. And just to push you with a pen a little bit more, my shout out is a .io, ironically enough. We started using, or not using yet, but testing out, playing around with intercom.io, although I don't
No, they have a .com now, don't they?
Do they?
Didn't they get that?
I don't know.
I totally lied. That's Intercom VoIP solution. Damn it.
Yeah, that's not the one you want. Intercom.io. I mentioned earlier that one of the things that I'm looking more at now, I'm moving more away from like, support emails and cases and that kind of thing, more into like getting customers through the trial and using Basecamp and conversion and all that. And some of the, so far Intercom has been really promising. Maybe I should say like preliminary shout out. Like so far, everything has been really easy to use, really easy to set up. It's kind of plug and play, that kind of thing. I will say the only reason I didn't go with customer I/O, in case Diana is watching, the only reason I didn't go with that is because I wanted an in-app kind of chat, because we've got some ideas about that as far as how it relates to conversion and that kind of thing. But yeah, so preliminary shout out, intercom.io. It's a really, really handy app. And one last thing before we do go, I did want to say congrats to Buffer for their big new Series A fundraising round. Everything looked like it was going to close fine, and yeah, you've all got money now to go blow, so have fun with that.
Thanks.
So,
have a big retreat at an expensive place. Go find some place that's like a really low score on this Nomad list.
We did go to New York, which was our most expensive retreat so far.
Oh, I don't think you're going to top that.
No, probably
pull
not.
an automatic and like just rent out of town.
Yeah, there you go.
Good idea.
Rent an island or something, like the whole island. Like go rent Cuba. That would work, right?
I don't have quite enough money for that. Also, that's a country, but whatever.
Whatever. When you got that much money, you're fine. You're fine.
We don't have that much money.
Oh, so make sure to get in touch with us. Let us know about those resources. supportops.co/question. Get you over to us. And if you ever happen to, by chance, accidentally, maybe just possibly pop up in iTunes to like update something or whatnot, go ahead and leave us a review there. It goes a long way in getting the word out about the show. This is episode 60, so we've gotten it out a lot. We just want it out a little bit further. If you don't want to open up iTunes, supportops.co/iTunes will get you there automatically too. So I made it even easier for you. Yeah, fancy. Next week is going to be a lot of fun. We're talking about something that Carolyn brought up a couple of months ago, something like that. I'm kind of glad we finally got it scheduled. We're going to be talking about how far does all this customer happiness stuff actually go. If you get emails about people that want to, like, say, for instance, write for the Buffer blog, how do you tell them, no, sorry, just not going to happen. So that'll be a fun show. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, 5:30 p.m. Central on Monday. Until then, have an awesome week.